Good morning. I'd like to call to order the September 1st Board of Supervisors meeting. Roll call, please.
Supervisor Carroll.
Here.
Supervisor Elias.
Presente.
Supervisor Miller. Here. Supervisor Melendez.
Present.
Chair Bronson.
Here.
Let the record show all members are present.
Madam Chair,
Supervisor Elias.
before we go to our invocation, I'd like a moment of privilege.
Proceed.
I'd just like to note that we have University of Arizona students with us here today, starting their new semester out. And this is a class called Reporting Public Affairs. Was it a 400 level class, 300 level class? Okay, we're just glad to have you here, and I just wanted to make note of that. I'm certainly the parent of a University of Arizona student, so we're glad to see your smiling faces here, and good luck with what you hear.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Carroll.
Madam Chair, if I might, I'd like to mention the great life that passed us James Wheeler, Colonel James Wheeler. Yesterday it was celebrated at Davis Mountain Dove Chapel by hundreds of his friends and family. Colonel James Wheeler flew in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, later having a distinguished career with Hughes, Raytheon, and as a full-time volunteer, not only in this community for such things like the Tucson Pops, but also he was 19 years the president of his homeowners association. So just for that duty alone, he gets meritorious service. But he is a proud father, a proud American, and a proud airman. As I say, he had a beautiful send-off with a flyover and a salute by the honor guard, and it was with great sorrow that we left him. And I want to give my best condolences to his wife Shar and their family. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Carroll. If there are no other moments of personal privilege, we'll proceed to the invocation to be offered by Pastor Julio Martinez, Lift Him Up Ministries International, with the Pledge of Allegiance to follow, led by Supervisor Valadez. Please stand.
Good morning to you all. I am honored as a local citizen and pastor of our community of Pima County to be here to participate at this board meeting of supervisors by providing the invocation opening prayer. Will you please bow your head with me at this time? We come before you on this first day of September 2015 to give you honor and praise. You are the source of all that is good. You are the source of all that our blessing comes through. Thank you for every gift that we have been given. We thank you for the opportunity to come together this day. We give respect and knowledge and acknowledge you as well as our creator and provider. Scripture tells us and informs us, where no counsel is, the people fall. But in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. It is for this reason that we choose to commit this meeting to you. In doing so, we are confident that we will have a successful meeting, and so we ask for your hand of blessing. We also ask that you would guide and direct our thoughts, our actions at this meeting, so that it is full of wisdom, productivity, but above all, that we may exhibit full respect for one another's voice of ideas, opinions, suggestions, and concerns. In conclusion, Scripture once again tells us and informs us, for where there is unity, there he will bestow his blessings. Thank you for helping us accomplish our work and our goals this day, and enhancing us all to be better and to serve this community with pride, dignity, and respect, while displaying your character. May God continue to bless this nation and our community. We thank you, and we all said, Amen.
Please join me in the pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Proceed with item 4, pause for pause. And we have Officer Foster, and she's brought us Cabo.
This is Cabo. Cabo's about 1 year and 8 months old. He's definitely a mixed bred dog. We think a mix of possibly a bully breed, boxer, pit bull, something along those lines. He's a super nice guy. And I think as long as he has a home willing to give him a little exercise, because he is a young dog, I think he'd fit in just about anywhere. We do always recommend dog intros though, because you never know, some dogs don't go along.
And maybe he wants to parade around, show us his skills.
Well, he does know some commands too. Anybody who might be interested will find that he knows sit and down and supposedly shake, but I couldn't get that out of him this morning. So everybody, this is Cabo. Happy to meet everybody he's run across this morning. But he did come to us as a stray, so we don't have a lot of background information about him.
Thank you, Officer Foster. And while you're introducing Cabo around, I want to congratulate PAC. You just got a big award from PetSmart, I think over $100,000. So again, congratulations to all the staff at PAC.
Thank you guys very much. We're really pleased and proud to be the recipient of a PetSmart Charities grant. You guys have
Maybe
a
a good university dog, university student.
Yeah, he could, as long as they have a yard of some kind and a willingness to exercise him, certainly.
They've got that big stadium. Would that be big enough?
As long as they're on leash.
But it's artificial grass.
But
Pastor, also, if you have any members of your congregation who would like someone to accompany them, or an animal to accompany them, please think about that as you talk to your folks, and maybe we can help them out. You're welcome.
Thank you, Officer Foster. There are no changes to the agenda, is that correct? Okay. Then let's move on to item 5, presentation proclamation. Proclamation to Judy Lynn, Pima County Community Outreach Coordinator, and Sam Brokenshire, Georgia Goodwin, Bart Goodwin, and Cheryl Bender, community organizations active in disasters, proclaiming the month of September 2015 to be preparedness month. I'll move the item. Motion and a second. If there are no objections, motion carries, and Supervisor Carroll will make the presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You can all join me here, please. Face the audience if that's okay. This will be your proclamation if you all want to hold it. Thank you all for being here this morning. Good day to you. Whereas across the nation, September has been designated as National Preparedness Month to encourage all Americans to improve emergency preparedness in their communities. Whereas during National Preparedness Month, there is a nationwide coordinated effort sponsored by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security to raise awareness about the importance of emergency preparedness and to encourage every citizen to renew their commitment to promoting emergency preparedness in homes, businesses, schools, and communities. And whereas emergency preparedness is the responsibility of every resident of Pima County, and all are urged to make preparedness a priority and take steps to protect our community before disaster strikes by learning about risk factors in order to protect against injuries, property damage, and potential economic loss in our community caused during disasters. And whereas during the month of September, the Pima County Office of Emergency Management, along with community organizations active in disasters, COAD, and other local, tribal, private, and volunteer agencies will engage in activities that encourage residents to take steps to make themselves and their families more resilient and better prepared for disasters and emergencies. Now therefore be it resolved that Pima County Board of Supervisors hereby proclaims the month of September 2015 to be Preparedness Month. This year's National Preparedness Month theme is Don't Wait, Communicate, Make Your Emergency Plan Today, and challenges all citizens, business, and schools, and universities, and communities to proactively develop communications plan for use during disasters and emergencies, developing communications plans and exercising and reviewing them regularly, along with other simple steps like assembling emergency supply kits and reviewing guidelines for preparedness at ready.gov, help to make our communities more resilient, ensure that Pima County can stand ready to respond. Passed and adopted this first day of September 2015. Would you like to say something about your efforts and the COADs that you're working with?
Hello, my name is Sam Grobenshire. I'm a member of the COAD, Community Organizations Active During a Disaster. This month is very important. Last night we got a taste of what may be coming this winter. And if we can bring this knowledge to the public and have them better prepared for what may be coming this winter, it's predicted that we're going to have a very wet winter this year. And along with that, flooding and anything else that can come with the rains. We just need to make the public aware, and we stand ready to assist in any way we can.
Thank you, and I think the other piece is we've got 3 hurricanes right out there now, and maybe you were going to say something about that, but it's getting to be a very interesting season.
Madam Chair and Board of Supervisors, thank you very much for helping us bring awareness to preparedness. We appreciate the support. That's what we do. We're working to make our community more prepared and more resilient, so thank you.
Thanks to all 3 of you. Would you like to say anything? Okay, I appreciate that. I do say that 1983 may be matched by the year 2015 this winter, so let's be safe. And thank you for the COAD members, and thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
We'll now proceed with call to the public. Let me remind speakers you have 3 minutes, and we ask that you abide by the rules of civility. Dennis Curry.
Madam Chair, Mr. Huckleberry, and Board. The Star Valley Specific Plan is this incredibly far-sighted and compelling document which describes the potential for a vibrant residential and commercial area in southwest Tucson. While continuing disagreements exist between the developer and our county government, we hope our county leadership can rise above those issues and find common ground that results in a fair and equitable solution that honors the vision the Star Valley Specific Plan describes. Our concern right now is Block 4, which is platted but not released for construction. It is our understanding that there's a builder who is ready and able to begin developing that area. This approval needs to happen soon, or our master plan development will be seriously compromised. Now this November, we are faced with an $800 million bond funding proposal. There are parts of the bond that I agree with. However, I had hoped to see something that would have helped Star Valley achieve its vision. Our fast-growing community has the same desires around community centers, pools, and splash pads as any other community. Yet of the millions of dollars anticipated to be poured into other communities alone, almost nothing is reserved for Star Valley in those regards. Here are some examples. The Lawrence Park improvement and pool. This $6.5 million project would include playground, soccer fields, and a pool. My key concern here is that $3 million for the pool appears to be uncertain, since wording in the project description indicates work may include a pool. Table 9 of the bond indicates only $3.5 million are allocated for this project. Kennedy Park improvements. This $2.5 million project is mostly capitalized maintenance of existing infrastructure. Now, county-wide splash pad program. This $4.2 million project will provide splash pads for the 6 Pima County parks, Pima County parks, none for Star Valley. Sahuarita Pool and Recreation Complex / YMCA. This $14 million project will provide a 40,000 square foot multi-generation, multi-use indoor recreation facility and a 5,000 square foot pool. In addition, Sahuarita will get a $7.5 million library and other amenities. The YMCA also at the UA Tech Park, $12 million, and they also get a $6 million library. The general goal of the Star Valley development plan, as stated, is to provide for a planned community of primarily single-family detached residences with the essential commercial services within the community. We need your help. Our community wants to extend an invitation for our coming leadership to help us understand how we can move forward. Your consideration to our need is respectfully requested. Thank you.
Maureen, could I ask you if we could get a copy of your remarks? We'll post them on if you don't mind.
I'll give you
The unabridged version. Thank you, sir. Jerry Otobani.
Good morning, Madam Chairman, Board of Supervisors. My name is Jerry Altaboni, and I live in Oro Valley. And I came here today to encourage every taxpayer to vote no on the bonds. If you like your paycheck, you can keep your paycheck. To protect your paycheck, you need to opt out of being taxed, again, for the 7 propositions. And what a surprise. On my way over here today, all over the radio, it stated that Mr. Huckleberry's friends were receiving large consulting fees for the bonds and listed all their names. We all know Mr. Ekstrom. Mr. Huckleberry raised my property taxes just recently, and he stated with the new budget, your taxes are going to go up again. Now we're paying for the attorneys in the lawsuit with the state due to Mr. Huckleberry's shenanigans to 18 to 23 million of overspending. Maybe Mr. Huckleberry could donate some of his $320,000 paycheck to pay for the overspending. Then he also stated our taxes will increase again, and the propositions would be 7 propositions will raise our taxes again. We are not his private money tree. Enough is enough. Many people in Pima County live from paycheck to paycheck, and this will push them over into food stamps and welfare. Those of you who can afford to pay your taxes will be paying more to cover these people with welfare. And then just drive around Pima County and see all the empty, closed businesses that have been overtaxed. So if you had a choice to open a business in Pima County or Phoenix, many would say Phoenix. District 1 pays almost double their property taxes, and they only want 30 million. But the bonds are 815 million with maintenance and operation. That moves it up to 1.2 billion with a capital B. Vote no on the bonds, and thank you and have a very nice day.
Richard Hernandez.
Buenos dias. My name is Richard Hernandez. I'm a resident of Pima County. I live in District 2. This morning I want to address Pima County voters. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of you have reached out to me. I've talked to you in Marana, Oro Valley, South Tucson. I've talked to you down in Green Valley, in Sahuarita, in the city of South Tucson, all over Pima County, and especially in my district. Do you want me to stop? And especially in my district down in the Sunnyside area. Let me share with you what you are asking me, and I want to repeat it. You would like for me to run for the Board of Supervisors in District 2. That's what the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of you have shared with me. So I'm here to reach out to the rest of Pima County and ask you if you want me to be your public servant. Is that funny, Ray Carroll? Okay, we do too. That's what we think of you. That's what I'm talking about, Pima County. When people have that smirk on their face, when they think it's funny. So thank you for the many, many meetings that I've attended all over Pima County, at your invite. I am sharing with you that I will be your servant. I take a totally different position than this board does, but I want to share with you just a few of those positions. First of all, I'm against higher taxes. Whether it's in a bond or a tax, I oppose them. Secondly, Pima County's #1 priority is public safety. When we spend around $10 million for soccer fields, but fail to pay our deputies, the people who stand on the front line to protect you, their raises that they were promised 5 or 10 years ago, their step raises, how is that more important to have soccer fields than to protect those who protect us? These are just some of the examples of things that I believe in, and that's why I'm here. I also want you to know that I'm of the position that we need to fire Chuck Huckleberry. I'm not shy, I'm not timid, I speak my mind. There's an article in the Arizona Daily Star back in January of 1997. It says here at the very top, I'm going to show it to you so you can look it up yourself, especially you students. In 1997, it says, Bronson pushes for the ouster of Huckleberry. In maneuvers similar to secret meetings in 1983 that cost taxpayers millions and millions of dollars, Supervisor-elect Sherry Bronson has pushed behind the scenes for the ouster of County Manager Huckleberry. I want you to know that I'm not standing behind the scenes, I'm up front with it. It's time for change in Pima County. Yesterday, Chuck embarrassed a student at Vail. He accused her of being dishonest, and yet he was. I'm going to run out of time, but I'm going to address this in the next board meeting. And students, pay attention, okay? It's all about you. You're our future. So Pima County, if you want me to serve you, let me know. rhndzz109@gmail. I am not afraid to give you my information. rhndzz109@gmail. Thank you.
So, Christopher Cole.
Madam Chair, before Mr. Cole speaks, a call to the audience, aren't people who speak supposed to address the Board of Supervisors rather than addressing the entirety of Pima County? I mean, that was just my understanding. Perhaps I'm incorrect. And I can understand everything Mr. Hernandez says. He wants to run, and I think that's fine, but I'm not sure this is the right forum for a political speech.
We'll ask our county attorney to respond, obviously not today, but to research and.
I think that would be good, Mr. Weaver.
Mr. Cole.
Hello again, I'm Christopher Cole, first Vice Chair of the Pima County Libertarian Party. Approximately 35 years ago, the people of Arizona passed several propositions, one of which is the apparently infamous to this Board of Supervisors, 1% cap on property taxes. The last 35 years, the state of Arizona has acted as an enabler to Pima County's addiction to overspending, much like an enabler will hand bottles of whiskey to an alcoholic. And now that the state of Arizona has said, no, we're going to require Pima County to obey the law, just like every other county in Arizona does, Pima County starts whining like a 2-year-old that can't swipe candy from a neighboring kid. Every other county in Arizona lives by the limit. Every other county in Arizona has the same impositions by the state, and yet they live within the budgetary limits that the people of Arizona said, you've got to do. Pima County is larger than some of the other counties, and so the impositions on from the state look larger until you allow for the size of the county and the size of the population and the size of the tax base and so forth. But Pima County has got to learn to be responsible, has got to learn to live within the means that the people of Arizona have given this county. Mr. Carroll, shall I repeat myself since you're obviously not paying attention? Paying full attention, I paid full attention to each speaker. Your comment is very interesting, Mr. Cole. Thank you. The spending problem needs to be addressed. It's not a tax problem. The spending problem needs to be addressed. I happen to notice, and I have not really done a lot of research on this, and I would welcome research being done by this, either by the county or other people, that as Pima County spending increases, the poverty rate in Pima County increases. So You need to address your spending addiction and get everything under hand. Thank you.
Kevin Kubinski.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Supervisors, Mr. Huckleberry. I am Kevin Kubinski. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Pima County Deputy Sheriff's Association and Fraternal Order Police. I'm here to address concerns that have come up due to the implementation of the ADP system. We understand the need and the reason for ADP. However, it is designed for a person that works Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. Law enforcement, corrections, public works, wastewater dispatchers, and civilian staff of the Pima County Sheriff's Department fall into a much different category, as does your staff. And this presents and has presented unique and challenging circumstances. The first issue I'd like you to consider is the statutory and through administrative policy, there are holidays that will sometimes fall on a weekend, and this creates an observed holiday versus the actual holiday. This poses an unfair reality for the departments as observed over the 4th of July weekend. Employees that had Friday off, the observed holiday as a regular day off, did not benefit if they had to work the actual holiday on Saturday, July 4th. With the exception of the holiday benefit. The day for them was straight time. This will occur again this year, right around December, maybe on Christmas or the New Year's Day. Because it falls, if either one of those fall on Saturday, I can't remember if they do or they don't. Those that have Christmas Eve off will not benefit if Christmas ends up falling on a Saturday. This will continue on as long as we keep this kind of format with the ADP system. The second issue that I would like to address is the amount of time that is required for supervisors and managers to spend fixing ADP issues. The problem can easily be eliminated by allowing users to be able to fix their own time cards and effect changes needed to make them correct. This does not alleviate the approval process and still falls on the same guidelines as it was done for 30 years prior to ADP. This would free up supervisors and managers from more critical department tasks. The third area of concern is the cell phone application. Numerous issues exist, from error messages to improper logging of time and overall user friendliness of the application itself. We would ask that the Board of Supervisors direct ADP to spend more time fixing the bugs and problems with the phone application. After speaking with individuals in the Public Works, Wastewater, and SEIU, we all seem to share common experiences with ADP. All have described the system as being an added hindrance to everyday tasks. If not kept up on, the system creates myriad of problems that need to be fixed. For the Sheriff's Department, this means that the deputies are spending hours per week dealing with ADP issues and mishaps that are represented. In addition to this, supervisors are required to make changes and fix problems with each of these employees. This hinders the supervisor from observing employees at high priority calls and affects the ability to properly supervise or observe employees' performance based on several hours a week dealing with ADP. Supervisors and deputies who are entrusted in making life decisions on a daily basis lack the ability to make changes on their own time cards. Madam Chair, I'm going to go over my time. Is that okay?
That's fine, continue.
To trust these individuals in wastewater, public works, and SEIU and Sheriff's Department to make decisions that affect large portions of the community at any given time, yet not trust them to make simple changes to their own time cards, is unjust. Most of these employees work in the field and do not have access to a desktop. With the application on the phones providing so many problems, ADP becomes an everyday issue that needs to be dealt with. And I have given all of you the problems that are reoccurring with ADP. I would like to offer a solution. I have verified that ADP has the ability to treat each of these different departments in Pima County separately from one another. This gives ADP the ability to create a system that is unique to each department. I have verified that ADP requires the Board of Supervisors to make this decision. If full autonomy was given to the departments that work 24/7, this would cut back tremendously on the time spent dealing with the reoccurring ADP issues. This in turn would not affect the verification process, as employees would still be required to approve their individual time cards, holding them responsible for all entries. I have provided all of you with the information discussed today. Please contact me with any follow-up concerns. Again, Madam Chair, Supervisors, and Mr. Huckleberry, thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments, and as you realize, this is a call to the audience, so we can't respond directly to you, but I'm sure we will be in touch with you, and we appreciate your civility, and thank you for making us aware of these issues. That concludes call to the audience, unless there are additional speakers. We have no executive session items, and so that brings us to the approval of the consent calendar.
Madam Chair,
Supervisor Miller.
I call to divide the question and
separate items 5 and 9 for separate discussion vote.
Items 1, 5, and what was
5
that
and
one?
9.
And 9, transportation and ADW communication services.
Right.
All right, what's the pleasure of the board on the remaining items on the
Madam
consent calendar? Supervisor Elias.
I'll move the remainder of consent.
Second.
Madam Chair,
Motion and a second. Supervisor Elias.
I'd just like to note that on item 3, Simpatico, which is the new behavioral health provider for Southern Arizona, that was awarded that contract by the state of Arizona. I just, in the line of full disclosure, I'd just like everyone here to know that one of Simpatico's subsidiaries is private for-profit prisons. And so I think we should all know that that's the score that we face here in Arizona with continuing companies moving into the realm of public safety.
Thank you, Supervisor Elias. If there are no further comments, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 5, Supervisor Miller.
Madam Chair, I had some questions on this item, and I guess they will be addressed to Mr. Whittegris. It appears that this contract was awarded to 2 different contractors, and ADW Communications and International Towers. And my question is, was this competitively bid?
Madam Chair and members of the board, yes, it was. This was a solicitation for qualifications under Title 34. Based upon the evaluation of the qualifications, these 2 were selected, and they will be competed on any requirement that exceeds $50,000 in value.
Will that be a competitive bid among any willing bidders, or will it be between just these 2 companies?
Just these 2.
And that's the determination you made based on this current bid that you put out? Okay.
Correct.
All right. Okay, and the other questions, I didn't see any, we weren't able to find any other contracts on this since 2008 for cell towers. Were there previous contracts, or who was doing the maintenance on them previously?
I apologize, I don't know the answer to that.
But there were previous contracts with
I would
outside
expect there would
contractors.
have had it, and the administrating department should be able to respond to that.
Okay. With that, if no one else has questions, I'll make.
I have some questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Supervisor Elias.
Yes, I understand this is a job order contracting deal, and that's fine. What I am concerned with is that many of the new communication towers that we have related to PC Wind are in very remote areas of the county. And in fact, one of them was so remote and so rugged that one of our brave officers lost his life trying to review that particular site in a helicopter crash. And God bless him and his family. But I think it's important to have some kind of answer as to what kind of questions they were asked regarding environmental protection for these remote location of these towers, and how well they are, how experienced they are in providing environmentally sensitive review of those types of towers in very rugged areas. I'm sure there's an answer in there somewhere, but I didn't see it anywhere. And it's a deep concern because many of those towers are out there on the west side, I know, and that concerns our chair and of course District 5 as well.
So your...
My question is what part of this process was, what answers they provided as a part of this process about environmental sensitivity in providing maintenance for these towers? Because, you know, that's an ongoing issue that we've always had trouble with cell phone towers as well as other kind of towers in environmentally sensitive areas. Including Tillamook is a good example.
No,
I mean,
yeah.
you know, they've just gone up there with trucks and stuff and ran over things without asking questions. So I just...
That was, I don't think our staff though.
No, these are contractors.
No, yeah.
These are contractors, that's why I'm asking, because it's better to get it all out on the table now, I think.
Yeah, are there any safeguards in the contract that respond to Supervisor Elias's concern, or do you know? And would that be a question for Tony?
Madam Chair, members of the board, you know, there are protections in the form of indemnity provisions and insurance for the county, et cetera. As far as environmental protection, you know, we could certainly report back to the board what was in there, if that would be of any value.
Madam Chair?
Supervisor Elias, and I think Mr. Huckleberry.
Oh, okay, I would hear Mr. Huckleberry, otherwise I'll make a motion to, you know, delay this until our next meeting so we can hear some answers about it. But if you have one, Mr. Huckleberry, I'd be glad to hear them, thank you.
Yes, Madam Chair. Any of the tower sites that are in environmentally sensitive areas undergo an environmental review and public process and permitting from the appropriate agencies that have authority. Usually in the special provisions with regard to the issuance of the permit, if it's, for example, on federal land, there are terms and conditions with regard to access and times of access and method of access that control the issues of environmental impacts and are designed to mitigate those. So those are on a case-by-case, tower-by-tower location, depending upon where they are. And so included in then the specifications that we issue post-construction, post-operational initiation, which is maintenance, the contractors are made aware of all of those requirements and required to comply with them.
Yeah, and that's a good answer because it does lie in the permitting and the rules that surround that permit that was issued for those particular towers. I'm just hopeful and concerned that our process for hiring contractors to do this would include some strong language about that and even penalties for mistakes made, because I've seen it on Tumamoc, like I said, and the tragedy that happened up there was very bad, you know, and it was TEP that just kind of went off and did stuff on their own. And certainly all those permitting issues and the sanctity of the desert laboratory that's up there in Tumamoc is, we all have known that for 100 years. They've been up there for more than 100 years protecting and watching over the desert. I'm just wondering if we've included that in our process and significantly enough so that we understand and so that our contractors know that there's penalties involved for mistakes that they make. It's time that we start dealing with that more carefully, I think.
So, did you want to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we delay this until our next meeting so that we can have some more information on what those permitting issues are that Mr. Huckleberry talked about in terms of the towers that we're talking about in this contract, and what kind of language we might include to protect ourselves and to protect the sensitive lands that sometimes we desecrate with these towers, to be quite honest.
Madam Chair?
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Supervisor Miller.
I just wanted to point out that under Article 3 of the Tower and Site Maintenance Program, and it's a fairly long document, it's 51 pages, I remember reading about those specific things, and on page 38 there's some pretty strong language about having to adhere to the laws, that the contractor is going to be responsible, and they're going to indemnify and hold Pima County harmless and its representatives from any claim arising from violation of such laws, bylaws, ordinances, regulations, whether by the contractor or contractor's employees. That's number Article 3A. And then under G, they have a very detailed contractor's responsibility for work, and F is preservation and restoration of property. Contractor will be responsible for the preservation of all public and private property on the surface or underground, along and adjacent to the work, and will conduct its operations so as to ensure the prevention of injury or damage thereto. No land monuments or property will be disturbed or moved until an authorized agent has witnessed and otherwise referenced their locations. When or where any direct or indirect damage or injury is done to public or private property by or on account of any act, omission, neglect, or misconduct in the execution of the work, or in consequence or the non-execution thereof on the part of the contractor, they will restore such property at its own expense to a condition similar or equal to that existing before such damage or injury was done, by repairing, rebuilding, or otherwise restored to same. So I think it's there.
It is there, but it does not discuss penalties.
I thought I saw that they're required, and I thought I saw that, but I don't know if George knows where that is. It's 51 pages, so.
But that's good research, Supervisor. I think you did great on that. But I still think that issue is relevant for us, and I'd like to wait until we hear some more information from our procurement department and from Mr. Huckleberry about it.
Okay. Is there any further comment? We have a motion on the floor to continue this to our next meeting, which is September 15th. If there are no objections, we'll continue this item. Moving on to item 9, Supervisor Miller.
On item 9, there is, this is IGA with the RTA, and they've contributed, and this is for $600,000 of RTA funds, but the total contract is $25,000. And my question is...
$25,000, the amount?
Excuse me, $625,000. And my question is, where is those other funds? What is the funding source for the $25,000? It does not identify, it's just got other, where are we gonna be getting that funding? Because we have $600,000 from the RTA. And it's listed as non-RTA resources.
Mr. Bernal or Ms. Cornelia, can you respond?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Miller, you're asking about the non-RTA portion of this?
Yeah.
We actually have a sewer line that also is going to be occupying the same area, and that portion of the cost will be borne by the wastewater department.
Wastewater?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And if no one else has any questions,
Any further discussion, questions? What's the pleasure of the board?
I'll move to approve.
Motion and a second. Are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. That concludes the consent calendar. Moving on to clerk of the board and authorization for approvals and resolution 2015-64 regarding special event liquor licenses and temporary extension of premises patio permits. What's the pleasure of the board?
Madam Chair,
Supervisor Miller.
I will move approval of resolution number 2015-64, amending resolution number 2002-273, and authorizing approval of a special event liquor license and temporary extension of patio permits.
And item 8, is there, I'll second. Any,
Madam Chair,
Supervisor?
you know, I'm okay with this because ultimately it still has to receive approval of the Board of Supervisors. But there are some businesses that have used the temporary extension of premises and patio permits. It seems like every week for a period of time. So I guess I'm just asking for some research, maybe from our legal team and Mr. Weaver, if we could discern when and how far a business can continue asking for temporary extensions. Because they become not temporary, they become a reality.
Yeah, I mean, you're basically saying it's not temporary, it's,
Yeah.
and they should seek.
I just like to know
another
when,
avenue.
so that everybody's playing on the same field. Because it seems to me, some businesses do this, and this impacts the other businesses surrounding them, and the neighbors in the residential areas as well.
Mr. Weaver, can you provide us with that information?
Yes, Madam Chair.
All right, we have a motion on the floor then. Are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to item 9 and 10. These are human resource items, classification, compensation. What's the pleasure of the board on these? Supervisor Elias.
I'll go ahead and move items 9 and 10.
Motion and a second. Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to item 11 under real property, surplus property. What's the pleasure of the board?
Madam Chair, I'll move item 11 as well.
Second.
Motion and a second. Are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. We're now moving on to hearings. Moving on to franchise license and permits, items 12, 13, and 14. What's the pleasure of the board? These are hearings. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address us in opposition to these items at this time? If not, Supervisor Elias.
Madam Chair, seeing no one come forward to address the Board of Supervisors on these items, I move to close the public hearing and approve items 12, 13, and 14, and also making note of the sheriff reports on items 12 and 13.
Second.
A motion and a second. Are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to item 15 in ordinance 2015-35. This is a hearing regarding justice court, home detention, and continuous alcohol monitoring. This is a hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address us on this item at this time? If not, what's the pleasure of the board?
Madam Chair?
Supervisor Elias.
I'll go ahead and move item 15, including ordinance 2015-35, and close the public hearing.
Second.
Madam Chair?
Supervisor Elias.
Again, I'd just like to comment that this is a difficult issue. However, it is important that we take a look at lower level offenders who are nonviolent and finding ways to keep them out of jail where they become better criminals, I assure you. And also takes a situation where you have nonviolent offenders, as we're doing with other misdemeanors, right now. And those people who work, those people who have children, those people who do other activities like school, when we incarcerate them for a low-level nonviolent offense, we take them out of a situation when they work and they lose their job and their children suffer, or if they're students, they stop the best thing in their life, which is educating themselves and moving forward with things. So I think this is a good program. Home detention, including electric monitoring, huge difference in cost as well. We're talking about spending $85 a day in incarcerating people, whereas electric monitoring that includes home detention, is $15 a day. So I believe we have to be real about all of this, and as difficult as it might be, I think these are the right moves to make for all of us in moving our society forward and making things better with our budget as well.
Thank you, Supervisor Elias, for your comments. Are there any further comments, discussion? We have a motion on the floor. Are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to item 16 under Development Services. This is a hearing of a plat note modification regarding CO 12-92-50 Sabino Greens of Sabino Springs, lot 18, plat note modification. Is there anyone, this is a hearing, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to address us in opposition to this item at this time? If not, what's the pleasure of the
Madam
board?
Chair.
Supervisor Miller.
I'd like to close the public hearing and approve item CO 12-92-50 Sabino Greens of Sabino Springs, lot 18, plat note modification as recommended by staff.
Second.
Motion and a second. Are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to item 17. This is a hearing. It's a rezoning ordinance, and it's ordinance 2015-36. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to address us on this item at this time? If not, what's the pleasure of the board?
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Miller.
I move to close the public hearing and approve ordinance number 2015-36, CO 9-07-03, Ventana Vista LLC, Cove Road rezoning.
Second.
Motion and a second. Are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on now to the addendum agenda under real property. This is a condemnation and resolution number 2015-65. Regarding the North Rito Interceptor. What's the pleasure of the board?
Madam Chair?
Supervisor Elias.
I was wondering if any members of the board would object if I was to move the addendum in its entirety.
I have one objection.
Okay.
I have one item that I need.
Very good, very good. Then I'll go ahead and move item 1, real property, including resolution 2015-65.
Second.
Motion and a second. Are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. The item that I wanted to discuss, and if you want to move the remainder of the agenda, and it's with the exclusion of item 5, I'd entertain such a motion, Supervisor Elias, if nobody wants to divide the question.
Madam Chair, I move to divide, or I call to divide the question, and I'd like to separate items 3, 4, and 5 for separate discussion and vote.
Okay, so let's move to item 2. What's the pleasure of the board on Primavera Foundation?
I'll move that item, Madam Chair.
I'll second. Motion and a second. Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to procurement, items 3 and 4. What's the pleasure of the board?
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Miller.
On item 3, I have a question as to, first of all, this contract was awarded to Solon, and now the contract is being reassigned to Sun Edison. And I was wondering, why is this happening? And did Sun Edison bid on the original contract?
Mr. Whitaker's?
Madam Chair, members of the board, I don't remember if Sun Edison bid on the original one or not. This is an assignment of all rights to an affiliate of Sun Edison. I believe it's primarily financially driven. You're going to see a number of these come through in the forthcoming board meetings. Solon has taken the position to, I guess, I don't know if the right term is divest itself, but actually to assign these things to.
Yes, Solon is divested.
Solon is.
So they were awarded the contract, and this really kind of bothers me that especially if Sun Edison bid on this contract, that they did the bid and now they're divesting or reassigning contracts to other contractors. That really concerns me. Do we have provisions and clauses in the contract that allows this?
Yes, absolutely, and this has been reviewed and approved by the county attorney's office as well.
Okay, and are there provisions in that contract that allow us to, have authority over the person that they've assigned these duties to?
That particular aspect I'm not certain of. I mean, all of the rights and responsibilities under the original contract will be maintained. I don't know if a specific individual is listed like you would find in a consulting agreement or something of that type.
Okay, I guess that question would be one for the county attorney then. When you reviewed this and approved it, do you feel confident that all responsibilities for the terms and conditions that are agreed to in this contract with Solon are now being assigned and can be properly enforced? Okay.
They step into the shoes of the prior contractor, so I believe.
So you're comfortable with this agreement? Okay, all right. And then have we started construction on this? Have they started this, or did they just immediately assign it to Sun Edison?
I believe there have been some of these that I'm sorry, I'm not certain, so I don't want to give you any information that
Can
I'm not
you
certain.
provide Supervisor Miller and the board members to answer to those questions?
We can. I don't believe any work has been started on this one. And again, there's going to be a number of them that will be forthcoming.
Okay, Madam Chair, then I would like to move to continue this item addendum 3 until the next
September 15th.
September 15th meeting.
Motion and a second to continue, and procurement and or any other relevant county department will provide the board with the answers to the questions that were asked today. So there's a motion to continue till September 15th. Is there any discussion, any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to HSA Bank, amendment number 3. What's the pleasure of the board?
Madam Chair, it's a very similar question on this one. You're reassigning responsibilities, obligations, and rights from J.P. Morgan Chase to HSA Bank. This actually is retroactive back to January of this year. And did we have some sort of a temporary agreement in place? And again, the same question, are we comfortable, has the county attorney reviewed this and comfortable with the fact that this new bank is going to be assuming the duties and responsibilities of this contract?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Supervisor Miller. My understanding is that J.P. Morgan is getting out of this particular line of business. And so HSA is taking this over. This is another assumption.
Yeah, it's similar to what's going on with Solon and Sun Edison.
Okay.
It's beyond the control of this board. These are private sector entities. But your question is, or can we assure that the contract as originally construed can be maintained and doesn't put us, the county, or the county taxpayers at risk.
As long as the contract is revised and, you know, reissued with their name on it. The other, getting back to solar, and I have a real, I guess I'll talk about that later with you, but on this one, okay, I guess if we have, you know, they're getting out of the business and we have no choice but to reassign this to another bank, I have no further questions on this item. I'm not sure if anyone else does.
Madam Chair?
Supervisor Elias.
I would just note that on this item, there's no comment about no cost because the costs assigned to it are $329,000. But I'm assuming that because they're taking over this contract as opposed to starting anew, all those protections for the taxpayer are still in place. And there's not extra costs associated with some company going broke or deciding to get out of a certain line of business. And so that's some measure of protection that we do offer.
So what's the pleasure of the board on this item?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to item 5, Friends of Robles Ranch. I'd like to continue this item till the first meeting in October and direct staff in the meantime to work with Friends of Robles Ranch to come up with a more amenable lease so that we don't put this store out of business, this is a nonprofit. They're providing service to the community. I think that some of the issues, and I've discussed this with Mr. Bernal, relate to furniture, electronics, and I would direct staff to meet with Friends and also a member of my staff to work with them, particularly as it relates to my friend's closet, so that they are allowed, and pardon this expression, to sell items bigger than a bread box. The Friends now has a $2 million insurance policy to cover this type of situation, and I would hope that we could work out something amenable so that they will be able to sell electronics and furniture. And I know we need some controls in place, but I think we also need to keep Friends of Robles Ranch operating because they provide a service to the community. So we have a motion on the floor to continue till the first meeting in October, and I think it was seconded by Supervisor Elias. If there are no further discussion or no objections, motion carries. Moving on to transportation.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Carroll.
Under transportation, number 6, grant application number 7, board, commissions, and/or committees 8, 9, and 10, I'd like to go ahead and move the remainder of the addendum.
So you're moving items 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10?
Yes.
Motion and a second to move those items. I want to thank Priscilla Cornelio as it relates to the Elephant Road Bridge project for a proactive position on this project. And we have a motion on the floor to move the remaining items on the addendum agenda. If there are no objection, motion carries. That brings us to the end of today's meeting. And if there are no objections, this meeting stands adjourned. Our next meeting is September 15th.
What do you think?
It's amazing. You might learn about how unfortunate stuff is happening, but kids are showing personalities or stuff with yeah. So any questions
they're not
or anything?
they're not going.
How many? What a page. Well, and what you thought about it and the assessment. It's your response to being here.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah, you can tell, so what could you tell from